Public schools. That was totally the default. Both Mike and I, we were good little academic monkeys, and we did very well in a school situation. We both really enjoyed school. We always vote yes on the school levies, and we think public education is just vital. We both ended up going to UW in the honors program and all those yummy good things, So we we have all the the show off resume stuff to show that we did very, very well academically, and so it was just obvious that our kids were going to do the same thing. Because of that, I think I never questioned the sort of shape of school and what happened. Seattle Public Schools sign up is in January, February. For his kindergarten, I visited like 14 schools. It was crazy.
People put a heck of a lot of thought. It consumes a lot of psychic energy. I know, 2 or 3 people at least who are just going through this total gut-wrenching process of finding a school for their kids. And it obviously is really important to a lot of people.
Part of that is like, trying to find the perfect thing. But part of it was because his year is a lump year. There's tons of kids and there's very little space. There would be tons of space in the class before and after, but for that year, it was horrible. I think that was maybe part of it too. Is like, well, there just aren't going to be a lot of options for his year, so let's just try the homeschool. I felt like a lot with school that I was sort of in this role of having to enforce stuff that I didn't even agree with. I mean, in kindergarten he had homework every day, which was just crazy. And how do kids feel who are totally smart kids but maybe aren't reading yet, and then you get to be in the purple group? I think that follows you all your life, and it's so unnecessary.
Part of the testing thing too is, what are they measuring? They're measuring how this person compares to somebody's description of what somebody ought to know at this age. Exactly. And how much they ought to have learned. And when you're 7, you should know how to read this many words. It took me a while to give up, to let that go. And it took me most of my adult years to get past the notion that someone who is a year younger than I, someone who was in the 2nd grade when I was in the 3rd grade, well, they knew a heck of a lot less then. And therefore I was better than they were at that time. This artificial sense of dividing up and identifying what are a person's value based simply on the age cohort in which they fall. In the school world, there's this hard divide between things that grown-ups do and things that kids do. And a lot of the mixed preschools and other experiences, we've come to other realizations that, kids can do a lot of the stuff that grown-ups can do.
That was the other it was one of the other big things with school. I was really shocked at how, it was like they were kind of trying to bribe the kids to read. And I think maybe for some of the kids that worked, but I was seeing for my kid that it was kind of becoming a turnoff. I was starting to hear, I don't want to read anymore. They would have, whatever classroom reads the most pages, gets a pizza party. I was like, oh, and that works. It actually works for the first couple of grades, and then the kids are not stupid. They're like, why do they need to bribe me to do this? It must not be fun. He told me later, actually after we decided to start homeschooling, something that I hadn't realized. They did a lot of stuff in small groups, and all the kids would read aloud together, and it was really difficult for him to do that because he would hear other people and he just wanted to sit and read on his own, but that wasn't what you were supposed to do.
She would pass out the same book, and she would say, okay, so if you want to read aloud, you can read aloud, and if you want to read in your head, you can read in your head. And I would always read in my head. Most of the other kids that would be reading aloud, and it was harder for me to read because there were a bunch of other voices reading the same things at the same time, and it was really weird. I started just not really liking to read at all, but before I really loved to read, and then when we started doing that, it just kind of really declined.
Yeah, when I'm reading, I don't really like people to read with me. It's kind of fun reading by myself in my head. 5 Little Pigs. Like that.
maybe this is just too much of a generalization, but that the girls do seem to ask for the academics earlier than the boys do. At least in Nick's classes, the kindergarten, first grade, the girls were ready with the pencils and they left it, and the boys were like, making paper airplanes, drawing pictures of tanks, going under the table, getting scolded, and and it was like, I really didn't think there was a problem with the boys, but they were, it was not appropriate for them to be doing this type of academic work yet. And the girls were more mature. They were ready in terms of fine motor skills and social skills and everything else. So if Robin had been our first child, I doubt we would have been homeschooling until Nick came along, and maybe even not then. But yeah, because I think she would have been just fine. But my heart felt for the little boys. And there were always one or two who were, kind of precociously mature and did fine. But both of them, they were always the ones that were getting disciplined. That just didn't want to, what interest he did have, as I said earlier, was just, was getting old. He didn't want to do math anymore. He didn't want to do reading anymore because he was being forced to do it so much and too early. So instead of instilling that love of it. So we thought about, maybe changing things. The style that they have really serves the needs of a lot of the kids there. So I could come in, and say, no, we need more beeswax, and but really, is that helpful to the community at large? It seemed actually like the better thing to just say, okay, instead of trying to change everything here to fit my kid, let's just, take ourselves out. And he had a very young, inexperienced teacher who was very punitive in first grade. I tried to make sure that he would have a decent teacher for second grade, and even though you're not supposed to do that, I volunteered there a lot, and they were open to that, and they actually did assign him to that teacher. But that started to feel really crappy, because here I was able to get my kid into a good situation, but there are lots of kids that couldn't get in that good situation. So somebody else was going to be with and there are crappy teachers there. And I don't know, it's one thing when they're like teens, but when they're little, when they're like 5 and 6, I remember there was a kindergarten teacher that used to scream at the kids. Oh, 5-year-olds. You just kind of look at, okay, well, here's what I know I can do now for the kid I have, and so let's just go with that. Just realizing that he was getting kind of depressed and not interested in learning. So we had to reevaluate, and it was like, well, do we just try to get a different teacher, or do we find a different school, or is it just school in general? And seemed to be just school in general. So we experimented for a year and loved it. It was in second grade when we started, and he's in sixth grade now, so it must be 4 years. We really do take it year by year. So, we're still good with this? Okay, let's keep doing it.
And the ratio of adults to children is still pretty favorable, with 2 adults and 2 children rather than 1 adult and 25 children.
It did, I have to say, making the decision to do it felt like jumping off a cliff. It really did. It was like, I don't know, but I kept myself alive by saying, it could be just for a year. Just for a year, we'll try it. Then we can run right back to school. It'll be okay. But once you've made that decision and you're actually really doing it, I don't know. It doesn't seem like a brave thing at all. It's just it makes sense for us.